Good morning, everyone. My name is Arpan Banerjee. I am a research scholar at the Department of East Asian Studies and also an academic counselor at IGNOU. And I have been teaching you the paper BPSC 134, that is Administrative System at State and District levels. So, welcome to my learning session and let us begin today's class. So far in the previous class, I was discussing the first block of this paper that is concerned with the historical context of the administrative system at the state and district levels. And as part of the historical context, we were discussing the first unit, that is state and district administration, and how it has evolved over the years, how state and district administration has evolved over the years. That is what I had been discussing. And in the next block that we are going to discuss today, it will be concerned with state and district administration and democracy in India. So how the state and district administration it fits into the democratic setup of India. That is what we are going to be concerned with in the next unit that we are going to discuss. So let us begin today's class and let us continue from where we left. So in the third block, we'll be discussing the emerging issues, and mostly we'll be discussing the center, state, and local administrative relations as part of the third block. So let us continue from where we left off. So in the last class, we were discussing this part of the first block that is concerned with district administration. And as part of it, I had discussed that the district is the principal unit of territorial administration in India. And we have already discussed how the Mauryas, they had built an imperial system. And in that imperial system, the district was the most prominent territorial unit. And how the administration was centralized and how there was a single officer called the Rajuka, who was at the apex of the hierarchy in the district level. And after that, I had discussed with you people how the British, they consolidated their territories in terms of the existing districts. And in the early part of the rule, the Britishers, they also believed that the larger the district, the greater the economy of its administration, and also the higher the prestige and stature of the district officer as well. So the foundation of the modern day district, it was laid during the time of Warren Hastings, and the purpose of the district administration, the way it was designed in order to resist political activities and political pressures. So that was the purpose, not to enable any sort of local social forces or to resolve any political conflicts in the larger interest of the society. That was not the purpose. The purpose was to resist political activities and political pressures. So the Britishers, they modified the existing pattern of district that existed during the Mughal period, and the purpose behind this modification was to realize as much as land revenue as possible, and also to maintain law and order. So keeping this in mind, they modified the district, and however, not much changes happened. The important functions and powers of the district administration, they remained intact in the hands of the government in the district. And also the representative of the government was authorized to exercise all sorts of supervisory and regulatory jurisdiction as well as part of his administration of the district. And the residuary powers also he had according to his discretion. So the district collector's office was a very important office, and till today it is a linchpin of administration in our country. And this office has evolved over 200 years of British rule. And in 1765, the British East India Company, which was granted the Diwani or the civil administration rights of Bengal, Bihar, and Odisha. So from then we can trace the evolution of the modern district collector's office, which still is the linchpin of administration in our country. And however, although the company had got the Diwani rights, they did not take over the whole civil administration. Their interests were only connected to the collection of land revenue, and there was a dual system of government that was there, introduced by Robert Clive. And as part of that, the responsibility of administration was divided, and it caused a lot of chaos, and it led to a sort of masterless confusion. So in order to remedy this, the then governor, British governor of Bengal, created the post of a supervisor for each district. So that supervisor later on went on to become the district collector. And this post of supervisor that was created by the British governor of Bengal, Verelst, that is can be considered in many ways a precursor to the office of the modern day collector. And one of the duties of this supervisor was that he had to investigate all the titles to the land. He had to distinguish between the kings of land and also regulate revenue and encourage commerce as well as administer justice, and also had to prepare a roll of all the rent payers and oversee the methods in which these rents were collected and appropriated. However, this experiment also failed, as these supervisors, they did not have sufficient training, and they were very inexperienced, and the landlords, local landlords, they did not extend their cooperation to enable these supervisors to function their duties, to perform their duties. So hence it was believed that because these supervisors were entrusted with so many duties, that the duties were so vast and so difficult, that is why the Britishers said that this post, it needs to be modified a little, because it requires, this kind of work requires superhuman labor. So these supervisors were also allowed to engage in private trade as well. And however, this experiment, it failed, but it did form the nucleus of the British administration. And this supervisor, it later on went on to become the district officers or the district collectors. So in 1771, the Court of Directors of the East India Company, they expressed their determination to stand forth as the Diwan, and also to take over through the agencies of the company's covenanted servants, the entire executive management of public revenue. So the Court of Directors, they took over the entire executive management of public revenues, and Warren Hastings accordingly issued a proclamation and nominated the supervisors as the collectors, and they were given the executive power of management and collection of revenue, also collection of previous duties of inquiry. So they had been entrusted by Warren Hastings in 1772 with the executive powers of management and also collection of revenue, and also they had their previous duties as well, which were of inquiry and investigation. So we get to see that this office of collector in the modern sense, which still exists today, it came into being in 1772. And these collectors, they also presided over the civil courts as well. And the Court of Directors of the East India Company, they believed that the collector's office should be a permanent feature of local administration as well of revenue administration as well. And they said that the offices of revenue administration, civil judge, and the magistrate, they should be combined under the collector. This was the opinion of the Court of Directors of the East India Company. So the work of the collector, it has been a continuous expression of the growth and range as well as the complexity of the government. And this office, it still continues, and the collector is basically responsible for the maintenance of law and order, for ensuring even-handed justice, construction, repair and control of the irrigation works, land records, field surveys, and collection and settlement of the land taxes in a fair manner. Also giving attention to the education and also to the healthcare and road infrastructure as well as the postal service. So although the with time the role of collector has changed, the British regime was an alien regime, and now we have a regime which is a national regime, which is responsible for enabling the local population of that district to realize their full potential. So the duties of the government, they also involves the certain welfareist measures, implementing the welfareist schemes of the government, which were not there during the British period. During the British period, the task was only to collect revenue. However, now the mandate of the government is to ensure welfare of all sections of the society. So that is why, accordingly, the district collector's role has also transformed with passage of time. Also, with the introduction of constitutional reforms, and the collector's many-sided responsibilities have also increased because the role of the administrative system has changed. Democracy has come into being post 1947. There are democratically elected representatives, that is the members of the legislative assembly, the member of parliaments, also the members of the rural local government and urban local bodies. So that has been introduced. The Panchayati Raj institutions, they have been given constitutional status. The Panchayati Raj institutions and also the urban local bodies. So decentralization has happened, and also as enumerated in the directive principle, the government is mandated to follow a welfareist path to ensure the welfare of its fellow citizens. So the concept of development at the very grassroots level, that has also come into being. So all these have led to a transformation of the office of the district collector. And however, the district is still regarded as the most important administrative division of the country. And right from the Mauryas to the Guptas to the Mughals to the British and to post-independent India, we can see that the district is still regarded as the most important administrative division of the country. And although during the British period, these districts, they were created for the only purpose was to create them was to efficiently collect land revenue and maintain law and order. But now we see that the mandate of welfare of the citizens is the most important purpose behind creating districts. So the district administration, as an agent of the state, it has assumed the responsibility of acting as a catalyst and functioning as a custodian, insurer, and protector, as well as the watchdog of the interests of the weaker sections, and also to ensure the welfare of the downtrodden with a development orientation. So we have discussed the first block. Now let us move on to the second block, that is concerned with the constitutional profile of state administration. So the very first article of our constitution, it says that India, that is Bharat, shall be a union of states. And the word union that has been used to mean the federation. So the union word, it has been used to mean federation in the constitution of the US. However, in our constitution, the union is not a federation like the US. Rather, in the Indian constitution, it has several features of a federation, like a dual government. So some of the features of federation are dual government. There is a distribution of powers, that is distribution of subjects into state list, union list, state list, and concurrent list. There is a distribution of power. State governments have been entrusted with certain responsibilities. The central government has been entrusted with certain responsibilities. So there is a clear distribution of powers between the center and the state. And the residuary matters, however, they reside with the center as part of Article 247. Article So it says that the residuary powers shall rest with the center. Article 248 says that. So the supremacy of the constitution has been ensured, and also uh, there is a quasi-federal structure. That is, the center has more powers than the states in certain aspects. So that is why we are not truly federal. We are federal with a strong center. So as I just told you, that Article 248, it keeps the residuary subjects, those subjects which are not there in any of the lists, in either the union list, state list, or concurrent list. The residuary subjects, they have been entrusted with the center, the union government. So unlike United States, where the residuary subjects are with the state governments, provincial governments. So uh, here we have a federation with a strong center. And there are certain unitary features as well in our constitution. Along with federal features, unitary features are also present. We have a unified judicial system. We have an integrated machinery for election and accounts and audit. The CAG, it audits the accounts of both the union government as well as the state governments. The Comptroller and Auditor General of India, that he has been given that the CAG has been given this responsibility as per Article 148 of the Constitution of India. Article 324 of the Constitution of India, it creates the Election Commission of India, which is responsible for conducting both central as well as state elections. We have a unified judicial system, and during emergencies, the union government has the power of superintendence over the state governments. So, and also during normal times as well, the union government can recommend the president can to the president about the governor of a state on recommendation of the center, can recommend imposition of president's rule in a particular state as per Article 365 if that state has not been following the directions of the center, and also as per Article 356 if the central government, or if the governor in that state is of the opinion that the constitutional machinery in that state has broken down. It has happened many times in our country. However, since the SR Bommai judgment of 1994, the frequency of this imposition of president's rule, it has decreased drastically. However, still the governor's role is very important, and the governor is practically considered to be an agent of the center. So that is why our constitution has not created a truly federal structure. Rather, it is quasi-federal, as Granville Austin. So quasi-federal, it is a quasi-federal polity, our country. So Granville Austin, a famous constitutional scholar, has called our federation as cooperative federalism because of the need for a close cooperation between the union and the state governments, which has been envisaged by the Constitution of India. So now let us discuss some of the powers of the state government. So the Constitution of our country, as I discussed with you, it has adopted a threefold distribution of legislative powers between the union and the states, and this is enumerated in the 7th schedule of the Constitution of India. And the list 1 of this 7th schedule is called the union list. It includes subjects which are under the jurisdiction of the union government. For example, defense, foreign policy, currency, all these things. And the state list has those subjects which are under the exclusive jurisdiction of the state governments. For example, prisons, law and order. And finally, there is the concurrent list which are under the jurisdiction of both the union as well as the state governments. For example, forests, education, higher education. So, however, if there is any conflict in matters of in those subjects which are there in the concurrent list between the center and the center's decision, it always prevails. That is also explicitly mentioned in the Constitution. So now, because our paper is concerned with the administrative system at the state level, now let us discuss some of the features of the state list. The state list has about 59 items. Originally, there were 66. However, some of those items were moved to the concurrent list. So some of the very important items in the state list are public order, police, agriculture, public health and sanitation, as well as local government. And these are those subjects which are of maximum concern to the people, and these can be dealt at a better these can be dealt in a better way at the state level only. However, the Rajya Sabha has been authorized by the constitution that if the Rajya Sabha passes a resolution of two-thirds of its members present and voting, the Rajya Sabha can authorize the parliament to legislate also on subjects which are there in the state list as well in the national interest. So the Rajya Sabha has been entrusted with this power to authorize the parliament to legislate on state list subjects in national interest. However, that authorization that the Rajya Sabha would give, it would only be for 1 year at a time, and it can be renewed by a fresh resolution. And under a proclamation of emergency also, if a national emergency has been proclaimed uh, as per Article 352, the Parliament can also legislate on a state subject during times of emergency, which has been imposed only once. And also, with the consent of two or more states, the Parliament can legislate on a state subject with respect to those consenting states. And also, the Parliament has powers to legislate with reference to any subject, including a state subject, for the purpose of implementing treaties as well as international agreements and conventions. Article 253 gives the Parliament this power. Also, during proclamation of President's rule in any state on behalf of the failure of constitutional machinery, as per Article 356, the President can declare that the powers of the state legislature shall be exercised by the Parliament. So the concurrent list, it originally comprised of 52 items. So the union and the state legislators, they both have concurrent jurisdiction over the subjects of this list. And the important subjects here are criminal law, marriage, education, civil procedure, criminal procedure, insurance, and also economic and social planning. The union and the states, they can legislate on any of the subjects in the concurrent list. Predominance is given to the union legislature here, as I have already discussed. So in case of any dispute between the union and the state, the union's law will always prevail. And now let us discuss the role of the governor here. So the governor, the office of the governor has been provided in the Constitution of India, and the governor is considered the head of the state and acts on the advice of the Council of Ministers of the state. And the governor of a state is appointed by the President of India for a term of 5 years. However, there is no procedure given in the Constitution of India about the removal of the governor. And the governor can be reappointed even after her tenure has come to an end. And a governor can be appointed as governor of two or more states also. So the governor has many executive, legislative, as well as judicial and emergency power. And the governor appoints the chief minister. So mostly the convention is that the leader of the majority party is called upon to form the government by the governor after the elections have taken place in that particular state. And also the governor makes many important appointments also, like chairmen of the State Public Service Commission, the Advocate General of the state appointed under Article 165 is also appointed by the governor on advice of the Council of Ministers, of course. The State Election Commissioner, these appointments are all made under the governor. All the executive work of the state is carried out in the name of the governor. And also the governor has a right of addressing and sending messages, also summoning and proroguing the state legislature, also dissolving the legislative assembly. All these powers the governor has. and all the bills that are passed by the legislature have to be assented by the governor in order for them to become a law, and the governor can withhold his or her assent to the bill as well, can send it back for consideration, or can reserve it for the consideration of the President of India. And the governor has also been given certain powers to grant pardons as well as reprieve and respite also of punishments that are given. There are certain emergency powers of the governor as well. And when a governor is of the opinion that there is a breakdown of constitutional machinery as well, the governor can submit a report to the central government to recommend to the president of the imposition of emergency or of the imposition of president's rule in that particular state. However, this report, the grounds on which the governor has recommended the imposition of president's rule in a particular state, that is under the purview of judicial review now, since the SR Bommai judgment of 1994. I've already discussed that with you. And the governor also has certain discretionary powers as well. And however, in case of a stable ministry in a state, those discretionary powers cannot be exercised that much. However, in case there is a very unstable government, the governor can exercise his or her discretionary powers in deciding which political party or which leader to call upon. In case there is a hung assembly, the governor's role becomes very important, because it is then that the governor decides that which political party or which coalition should be called upon to form the government or should be given a chance. However, mostly the convention is that the leader of the majority party is called upon to form the government and become the chief minister. So the appointment of the chief minister of a state is also a very important function of the governor. And when a party gets an absolute majority in a particular state, the governor has absolutely no choice but to call upon the leader of that political party, to form the government and to become the chief minister. However, when no political party or no coalition has got an absolute majority, it is then that the governor gets to exercise her discretion. And also, the governor can dismiss a ministry if he or she is of the opinion that the ministry does not have the confidence of the house, of the lower house. And the governor has also got the power to dissolve the assembly also, in case the governor thinks that there is no possibility of a stable government, and the governor can recommend dissolution of the assembly and also call for fresh elections. This happened in 2005 in the state of Bihar in India, where after the elections in February 2005, since no party was able to form the government, no party or coalition could muster a majority. So the governor of that state of Bihar, Mr. Bhutta Singh, he recommended the dissolution of the assembly without even a single session of the assembly being held. And then again, fresh elections were held in October-November 2005. The governor has also got certain emergency powers, and also it has been alleged that the emergency powers of the governor have not been used judiciously. So these emergency and discretionary powers, they should be used very judiciously. However, it is always alleged that since the governor is an agent of the center, the governor does not use his or her discretionary powers in a judicious manner. Now, we shall be discussing the state legislature and the functions of the state legislature. So, as we all know, legislation, it provides the framework for policy formulation, and also it arms the government with the powers to implement these policies. And at the state level, the function of providing necessary legislative framework is performed by the state legislature. However, there is no uniformity in our organization of state legislature in our country. So there are some states which have both the upper house and the lower house. which have which have a bicameral system where there are both the houses, the Vidhan Sabha as well as the Vidhan Parishad, or the Legislative Assembly and the Legislative Council. However, most of the states in India, they are unicameral. Only a few states are bicameral because the Legislative Council does not have any say, does not have any important role in the lawmaking procedure. The Legislative Assembly always prevails over the Legislative Council. So that is why the Legislative Council has been called a sort of a vestigial organ of the state constitutional machinery, and also a backdoor entry for it has been alleged that the Legislative Council has become a backdoor entry for those representatives who are not able to secure the for those leaders who are not able to secure the majority of the people, so who are not able to win in the Legislative Assembly. They seek to enter the uh, legislature through the Legislative Council. So that is why it has been in many of the states, because the Legislative Councils it can never prevail over the Legislative Assembly. The Legislative Assembly has got an edge over the Legislative Council, and the Legislative Assembly's decisions always prevail. So the Legislative Council has been described as a toothless tiger. And the Constitution has also provided provisions to the Legislative Assembly or the Vidhan Sabha to dissolve or to completely do away with the Legislative Council. So some of the states, they still have Legislative Council, like Andhra Pradesh, Bihar, Maharashtra, Karnataka, Uttar Pradesh. These states have Legislative Council. However, some of the states, they had Legislative Councils, but they have done away with that. For example, states like West Bengal, they have done away with the Legislative Council. Tamil Nadu has done away with the Legislative Council. And in those states, only the Legislative Assembly is there. So, in the Constitution, it has been provided that every state shall at least have one house, and the strength of that house should be from 60 to 500, and the members of that house would be chosen on the basis of universal adult franchise, and the leader of the majority party or coalition in that house shall be appointed as the chief minister, and shall remain the chief minister only as long as his or her party enjoys the confidence of the majority of the members of the house. In case it is same to that of the what happens in the Lok Sabha, in case the majority party or the leader of the house loses the confidence of the majority of the members of the house, then he or she has to resign. So, as I have already discussed, that the Legislative Council, the very existence of the Legislative Council or the upper house, it is at the discretion of the lower house or the Legislative Assembly. It can be dissolved, it can be created, or it can be done away with through a resolution passed by 2/3 members of the Assembly. So these provisions are given in Article 169 of the Constitution of India regarding the Legislative Councils. And the elections to the Legislative Councils are quite similar to that of the upper house in the parliament, and they are held through indirectly. And these members of the Legislative Council, unlike those of the Legislative Assembly who are elected directly through universal adult franchise, the members of the Legislative Council, they are elected indirectly and through the principle of proportional representation by the means of single transferable vote. And the duration of the Legislative Assembly is 5 years until unless it is dissolved earlier by the governor of the state. And the term of a Legislative Assembly can be extended by up to 6 months by the Union Parliament in case there is an emergency, imposition of national emergency in the country. So the legislative procedure in the state level is quite similar to what is there at the union level, and the money bills, just like in the union level, they can originate in the Lok Sabha, not in the Rajya Sabha. Similarly, at the state level, also a money bill can originate only in the Legislative Assembly or Vidhan Sabha, and not in the Legislative Council. and the legislative council can only make recommendations with regarding to money bills, and which may or may not be accepted by the legislative assembly, and it has to give those recommendations within 14 days, and if it doesn't, this bill will be considered passed if it has got it if it has already been passed by the legislative assembly. And regarding other bills also, although in these ordinary bills, they can originate in either house. uh, However, the opinion of the legislative assembly is what matters here also. The council can reject or modify the bill, uh, and can withhold it also for 3 months. But if it does not give it consent within 3 months, then it would be considered as passed, because the legislative assembly always prevails over the legislative council. So the supremacy of the legislative council is always established in case of money bills as well as in case of ordinary bills as well. However, in case of a dispute also, there is a provision of the joint sitting as well of the two houses, and the concept of the governor's veto is also there, and the governor can give his or her consent to the bill, or can withhold his or her consent to a bill, and can send that bill to the president also for can reserve the bill for the president's discretion as well. And the governor has also been given power to issue ordinances as well, and those ordinances are issued when the legislature of the state is not in session, and these ordinances, they cease to have any effect on the expiration of 6 weeks from the date of reassembly. So Article 213 gives the governor this power, similar to what the President of India has under Article 123. So the legislature, apart from providing necessary legislative support to the executive, also acts as an instrument of popular control over the administration. So, like in the Lok Sabha, questions are asked in the Lok Sabha and the Rajya Sabha. Similarly, in the Legislative Assembly, also the members have a right to ask questions from the government. Can also ask supplementary questions as well. So this device, it keeps the government on its toes, and whenever the government commits any mistake, then the government is compelled to promise and take corrective actions, because it will be scrutinized by the opposition. So discussions also take place in the house, and certain motions are also passed, just like the parliament. So at the state level, in the state legislative assembly also, call attention motions and adjournment motions are also brought forward on important public matters. And also through the device of the budget, the financial control is also maintained over the government and over the provincial government, and no money can be raised and no expenditure can be incurred without a vote by the legislature. So Article 202 of the Constitution of India, it talks about the annual financial statement of the state level of the provincial governments, just like Article 112 is concerned with the annual financial statement of the union government. So the procedure of the budget is the same in the state, just like the center, and no expenditure can be raised at the state or in the state also without the incurrence of the legislature. So by controlling the purse strings, the legislature controls the programs and activities of the government. And also it is true that by virtue of its majority in the legislature, the government may ultimately get the money it wants, but during the process a lot of discussion takes place, and this discussion, it keeps the government in touch with the needs of the people, And also through the Public Accounts Committee and through the audit of the CAG, there is a post expenditure control of the state government. So that we have discussed, and any instance of unauthorized and improper or imprudent expenditure are discussed in detail and also brought to the notice of the legislature, which keeps a vigilant eye on the government. And just like there are committees at the union level, there are legislative committees at the state level as well. So there are the financial committees at the state level as well, including the Public Accounts Committee, the Estimates Committee, as well as the Committee on Public Undertakings. There are the departmental standing committees as well. There are the committees to inquire as well, which includes the Committee on Petitions, the Committee on Privileges, as well as the Ethics Committee. Then at the state level, there are certain committees to scrutinize and control the state government as well. Those committees are also there. The committees to scrutinize and control the state government, which includes the Committee on Government Assurances, the Committee on Subordinate Legislation, the Committee on Papers Laid on the Table, also the Committee on the Empowerment of Women, the Committee on Welfare of SCs and STs, and also there is a joint committee on offices of profit. After that, at the state level, there are also certain committees relating to the day-to-day business of the house, so which include the Business Advisory Committee, which includes the Rules Committee, which includes there are these other committees as well, which is related to the absence of members from the sittings of the house, which are part of the committees relating to day-to-day affairs of the house. And also there is a committee which is related to private members' bills and resolutions. Finally, there are certain housekeeping or service committees as well at the state level also, which are relating to the provision of facilities to the members. So these housekeeping committees, they include the General Purposes Committee, they include the House Committee, the Library Committee, and finally the Committee on Salary and Allowances of the members. So all these, through these legislative committees, a control is maintained over the executive. These committees, they examine the various aspects of the working of the government, and also they make certain useful suggestions. So the legislative committees, they act as a very important device of exercising control over the government, because the assembly is too unwieldy a body to examine the working of the government in detail, and the members of the assembly, they do not have the requisite expertise also. However, in these committees, there is a lot of debate and discussions that take place, and through these committees, they exercise control over the government, and they bring the failure of the government to the notice of the legislature and the people. So there is a principle of ministerial responsibility that is also there, and the ministers, the council of ministers, are collectively responsible to the house, that is the lower house, and they stay in power only as long as they enjoy the major confidence of the house. If no confidence motion is passed against them, then they have to resign. So however, it has been the responsibility of the political executive towards the legislature has been ensured. However, it is argued that the legislative control with regarding to audit is a little too tight, and it takes away the initiative of the administrators. The State Council of Ministers, it performs the almost the same functions as is performed by the Union Council of Ministers, however, with regarding to the state subjects, and is appointed by the governor or recommendation of the chief minister, and they stay in office during as long as they enjoy the pleasure of the governor. And a governor can be a minister can be dismissed by the governor on the advice of the chief minister as well. So just like the union, at the union level, there are cabinet ministers and there are ministers of state as well as deputy ministers also in the state level. And the number of ministers in the council of ministers shall not exceed 15% of the total number of members of the legislative assembly. So this was done by the 91st amendment of 2003. So the Council of Ministers, they are the highest policy making body of a state government and also review the implementation of the policy. And the doctrine of ministerial responsibility is there, and the Council of Ministers are collectively responsible to the State Assembly as per Article 164, Clause 2. And there is a division of work also into departments at the state level as well. And the portfolio system is there, so different portfolios are assigned to different ministers, and the governor has been given the power to make rules for the efficient conduct of business of the house by Article 166, Clause 3. So the consideration of the chief minister has also been is also an important aspect, and these are called coordination cases. In these cases, the minister in charge of a portfolio records her recommendations and submits the file to the chief minister for her order. So the governor has to always act on the recommendations of the chief minister. That is why the governor has been given only a ceremonial role. And in case a party has an absolute majority, then the role of the governor is only ceremonial, and the governor has to invite the leader of the majority party to form the government. So the chief minister is the most powerful amongst the council of ministers, because the chief minister is the leader of the council of ministers, and the chief minister has to assign portfolios among her ministries, among the ministers. So the assignment of portfolio is to be done by the chief minister only, and the chief minister can change such portfolios whenever he or she likes. So the chief minister plays a coordinating role in the functioning of the council of ministers. And also it is the chief minister who has to ensure the collective responsibility of the council of ministers to the state assembly and also set the agenda of the cabinet. So the chief minister exercises a great influence upon the decisions of the cabinet. So there are certain powers that the chief minister enjoys in relation to the governor as well. And although they are not mentioned anywhere in the constitution, a convention has been sought to be established whereby the chief minister could be consulted regarding the appointment of the governor. The Panchi Commission also recommended it, but it has not been followed, and the chief minister is not consulted in appointing governor. That is why we see that many a times what happens is that when the chief minister when there are different governments when the governments belonging to the union level is of a different party and the government of the state level is of a different party, we see that there are many cases of conflict also between the governor and the chief minister. For example, what has been happening in the state of Tamil Nadu very recently, where the state government has appealed to the Supreme Court to against the governor's reserving of bills. So the governor has been withholding assent to many crucial bills in the state of Tamil Nadu. So that is why the chief minister of Tamil Nadu has approached the Supreme Court regarding that. So also in the state of West Bengal as well, certain conflicts can be observed with respect to the governor and the and the chief minister and council of ministers, because the chief minister is not consulted in appointment of governor. However, the Panchi Commission had recommended such a consultative process. So, the speeches of the governor also on ceremonial occasions and the annual speech before the assembly, before the beginning of the assembly, are also have to be approved by the government. So, the chief minister is the leader of the house and has certain powers in relation to the legislature also, and the chief minister sets the legislative agenda, and the legislative measures are brought before the assembly only after the approval of the council of ministers headed by the chief minister, and the chief minister approves all the senior appointments like those of the secretary, additional, joint and deputy secretaries as well, and controls the entire bureaucracy of the state. And the chief minister, through his or her cabinet, controls their service conditions as well as disciplinary matters. So the chief minister has a lot of powers regarding this as well, because the chief minister has power over the control and service conditions as well of those who he or she approves or appoints, like the secretaries, the additional joint secretaries, the deputy secretaries, and also by virtue of being the head of the political executive, the chief minister controls the entire bureaucracy and is assisted also by a secretariat that is headed by the chief secretary. And through the cabinet, the chief minister controls the service conditions also, as well as the disciplinary matters. The chief minister has to supervise that, and the chief minister also has to provide leadership to these people who are appointed by the chief minister to ensure good performance as well as good morale also. Also, the legislative measures that are brought before the assembly, they are also brought only after the approval of the chief minister, who is the head of the council of ministers at the state level. And many a times the chief minister can keep many important portfolios to herself or himself as well. And regarding the governor also, the chief minister has a lot of powers, because the speeches that the governor has to give at ceremonial occasions, during the annuals, during the before the presentation of the annual financial statement or the budget, and also during certain annual occasions before the assembly is convened, all these speeches are given by the chief minister and the council of ministers. So these speeches have to be in accordance with the policy laid down by the council of ministers, which is headed by the chief minister. However, many a times, especially what we can see in the state of Tamil Nadu right now, and it happened earlier in the state of Punjab as well, we can see that the governor of that particular state, while addressing the house, has deviated from what the state government gave in writing, and has not followed, has not read that speech word by word, and as many a times said things from his or her own accord, which have led to a sort of conflict between the governor and the council of ministers. So, and the president, the chief minister of the state at the state level, has to lead and defend his or her council of ministers in the assembly, and it is the chief minister who has to ensure the collective responsibility, because if the collective responsibility is not maintained, then the chief minister would have to resign. Then the chief minister would lose the confidence of the house. So the chief minister would cease to be a chief minister. So that is why it is the duty of the chief minister to ensure the collective responsibility of the council of ministers to the state assembly, and it is the chief minister only who sets the agenda for the cabinet also, and who asserts a great influence on the decisions of the cabinet. And the chief minister takes decisions on important matters of coordination, although these are allotted to individual ministers. And the chief minister plays a very important coordinating role also in the functioning of his her council of ministers, and it is the chief minister who has to see that there is a coherence in the decisions of the various departments of the government. And it is the chief minister who many a times reassigns, has the power to reassign portfolios also. So if a certain minister is not performing according to the chief minister, is not living up to the expectations, so the chief minister can take away that portfolio and assign it to a different person. The chief minister can also entrust one person with multiple portfolios as well. So the chief minister is the real head of the executive at the provincial level, and the governor is only the ceremonial head. And the chief minister performs the same functions in respect of the state government as the prime minister functions in respect of the union government. Uh, the real executive power of a state government, it vests in the council of ministers. However, the chief minister has acquired a very special role in the exercise of executive power. And the chief minister can also require any particular case of any department to be placed before the cabinet. And there are certain presentations also that are done before the cabinet regarding important policy matters as well, which have wide repercussions. And important cases of disagreement between two or more ministers are also brought before the cabinet for its decision. And so we have discussed the portfolio system as well, wherein the chief minister divides the certain different portfolios to different ministers, and the chief minister has also been given the power to assign two or more portfolios to one minister also, and also to reassign portfolios as well. So with the passage of time, because the scope of governmental activity has vastly increased, this portfolio system has been brought into existence, and the state governments have framed allocation of business rules also, according to which the work is divided amongst different ministers of the government. And it is the governor who has been entrusted with the responsibility to make rules for the efficient conduct of business in the house, as per Article 166, Clause 3. And also, the doctrine of collective responsibility is a very important aspect, and because only as long as the house enjoys the ministry, the cabinet, the council of ministers, they enjoy collective the confidence of the house, only till then they can stay in power. If they lose the confidence, if there is a no confidence motion that is successfully passed against them, then they will be removed from power as per Article 164, Clause 2. So, in today's class, we have discussed the functions of the district collector. We had at first discussed the functions of the district collector and how, in the British period, the district administration was there, how the district was very centralized, and how revenue collection and maintenance of law and order were the only functions. However, in post-independent India, we see that the office of the district collector, it evolved, and enabling the local population and ensuring the implementation of the welfareist policies of the government became the priority of the district administration. And also decentralization, after implementing the decentralizing measures of the union government and also of the constitution as well, that is also a very important task of the district administration right now. Afterwards, we discussed the role of the state government, the legislature, and the governor, as well as the chief minister in the administration of a particular state. We discussed their different powers, we discussed their different responsibilities, and in the next class we shall be discussing the secretariat system we shall be discussing the secretariat system at the state level in the next class. So that is what we shall be discussing in the next class, the secretariat system at the state level. So we have covered the first unit, the first block in this class, and we shall be doing the in the next class we shall be doing the secretariat, the role of the state secretariat, and in the next class we shall be doing the role of the state secretariat. So thank you everyone for joining my lecture. Namaste.